The 10 tribes were taken out of the land. And guess what? The Assyrians took them. And it's written of in the Apocrypha, prove that the Indian tribes on the chart are the lost tribes of Israel. I proved it. It cannot get disputed. They left the land Negro. They left black. But a curse happened to the 10 tribes. And this is why when you look on our sign that we have sometimes, they don't look exactly Negroid like us. Why? Let's get the chapter and verse first. 2nd Ezra 13 and 39. Read it, Elder Lawya.
2nd Ezra chapter 13.
Don't forget Maccabees now. Hold that because we're going to hit that.
2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse number 39.
So what happened to the 10 tribes that were taken out of the land according to the Old Testament? 2 Kings 17. Read.
And whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto himself.
Another peaceable multitude.
Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of the land or out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive.
So Salmanassar led away captive what?
The 10 tribes.
The 10 tribes that were living in the northern kingdom. Read.
And he carried them over the waters.
Over the waters.
And so they came into another land.
And they came into another land. The new world. Read.
Verse 41. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen.
Come on.
And go into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
Went into a further country where never mankind dwelt. Keep in mind, folks, that before the flood of Noah, the earth was one landmass. After the flood, the earth broke, and the place they would call Atlantis, or the capital of the Nephilim, went further west. And it became what? A hidden land. The Most High moved that wickedness far west. And that's what we call the Americas today. And what they call in certain circles, the lost land of Atlantis. America. Read.
42. That they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land.
They never kept in their own land. Read.
Verse 43. So if I can mention, the reason why they left the land of Assyria among the heathen was to keep the laws that they never kept in their own land.
Because disobeying led to expulsion.
Exactly. That's right.
So they said, you know what? We're gonna try to do this right this time. Let's leave and set up the commandments and the laws and statutes over in the new land. You see that? And that's why you can find Hebrew in Ohio, in ancient Phoenician Hebrew too. In Ohio and all that, in different areas till this day. And even in Puerto Rico, they found archaeology of ancient Hebrew tablets. Right? So that they can serve in what? You got it. They can serve in the new land, following the law, statutes, and commandments. But guess what? Don't forget, there were temples that were still over here. That's right, pre-flood temples with scribes on the wall, like in Mexico and others. And you had men go in there and begin to read some of the divinations and wickedness that was pre-flood, and they began sacrificing over here in the Americas. And that's when the Most High said, well, okay, I'm going to send a fierce nation against you as quick as the eagle flieth. I'm sending Edom to the new world to chastise these tribes who came over to first serve me, but began to disobey all over again.
Hey, if the people don't believe that, read that book called The American Holocaust.
The American Holocaust. Exactly. Exactly. But originally, they were all black. They were all dark-skinned coming out of these areas. But something happened. Finish reading what you have, Elder Lawya.
Yes, sir. 43. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river, for the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half.
Go ahead.
And the same region is called Arsareth,
Which means hidden land. Hidden land. Now, hold that and let's go to Hosea 7 and 8. So once the 10 tribes left the area, what would happen? They no longer had the protection of the Almighty. Right? Come on.
Hosea chapter 8. You said verse 7? Or Hosea 8 and 8?
Hosea 7 and 8.
Hosea 7 and 8. Hosea chapter 7, verse number 8. Ephraim, he hath mixed himself among the people.
Now, Ephraim was what? The leader or the king of the northern kingdom of Samaria. After they were taken out of the land, as a curse, as was written, they will be scattered amongst the other nations and begin to serve other gods. Right? And through this, they will get conquered by other races of people and begin to mix, read.
Ephraim, he hath mixed himself among the people.
Speaking of Ephraim over the 10 tribes, they were being raped or intermarried with the races who began to conquer them. Therefore, by the time Judah, Benjamin, and Levi would run into them, they would be of lighter hue. Okay? They would look like some of the nations that have ravished them, according to the curse. See? That's why Judah, Benjamin, and Levi are predominantly the races that the tribes who were predominantly intact during crisis time. This is why the 10 tribes don't look exactly like Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, because we stayed intact. We were there during the Roman Empire, and we eventually ran into Africa. So when we met them over here, by the time we seen them here, they looked like an entirely different race. They looked like Gentiles to us. See? Read.
Ephraim is a cake not turned.
Ephraim is a cake not turned.
Verse 9. Strangers have devoured his
It
strength.
says Ephraim is what?
Ephraim is a cake not turned.
Ephraim is a cake not turned. Black on one side, dark on one side, light on the other. Read.
Strangers have devoured his strength.
Strangers, Gentiles, have devoured his strength.
And he knoweth it not.
And he don't even realize it. They don't even realize that they're the children of Israel. The 10 tribes. But the Most High would one day, what? Awaken Judah to bring them back to the fold. Now, because of time, I'm about to jump into some of this history.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they fell. Now you have the 10 tribes scattered without hope, without any hope in the world, believing they're Gentiles. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi is still intact. Eventually, the kingdom or the kingship falls under the Babylonian Empire. And after the Babylonian Syrian Empire, then you would have the Persian Medo Empire. And then you got it. The Greeks and Romans.
Mm-hmm.
They took the black Jews away. Let's now focus on the Jews who were left in Judea now. Under the Greeks, there arose one by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes. This is around 164 BC, between the Grecian Empire and the Roman Empire. Here's a bust of an Edomite by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, the reason we're going into him is because every place the Israelites are conquered, right? The government, what I would call the governmental as well as religious blueprint on how to keep us enslaved begins with Antiochus. That means if we're conquered, they would use the same rules of Antiochus and Epiphanes to keep the children of Israel enslaved. Right? Now, in the book of Maccabees, it breaks down the Gentiles' intent against Judah, Benjamin, and Levi to keep us from ever awakening. Because once we begin to come to the light, we'll begin to awaken our other brothers who were scattered. So they had to put a religious mechanism in place, a tyrannical religious mechanism. Now, my question to you, how many of you can say you agree with what Antiochus Epiphanes set up? And I'm going to go over these through bullet points.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Tell me if you agree with this. We're in what? 2 Maccabees, the 6th chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Read.
2 Maccabees chapter 6, verse 1.
Come on.
Not long after this, the king sent, if you don't mind, can we start in 1 Maccabees 1 and then
Go
jump
ahead.
over?
Come on.
So we're going to start in 1 Maccabees 1 and then jump over to 1 Maccabees 6.
Come on.
1 Maccabees 1, verse 10. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes.
It's speaking out of the Greeks.
Son of Antiochus, king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Jumping down to verse 41.
Now, of course, we taught this in the academy last week. Who's Edom?
Mm-hmm.
Who was in Rome during this time? You got it. Zephon's lineage through Esau took the throne of Rome years before the Greeks and Romans came on the scene in power. The Edomites were ruling in Rome years. I'm talking about over 1,000 years before Christ was on the scene. They were already, you got it, in Rome and set up a throne. You can read that in the book of Jasher through Esau's grandson, Zepho. Zepho is written of in Genesis, the 36th chapter. Go on.
Verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people.
So now he wrote a decree to Rome. To Jerusalem, that we should all be one people. No more separating according to what God you worship. You understand? Or what nation you're aligned with. That all people should be one people. Read.
And everyone should leave his laws.
And every race of people, regardless of the traditions of your foreparents, should leave their laws.
So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king.
All the heathens agreed to denounce their own traditions to make a new way of life.
Mm-hmm.
All races under one understanding, irregardless of their forefathers' traditions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get back to the Tower of Babel.
Mm-hmm. Which at this time was called Hellenism.
It's called Hellenism. Exactly. So he set it up where the Gentiles would agree to denounce their traditions and walk in a new world fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds familiar? Sounds like the world we're living in today, doesn't it? Come on.
Verse 43. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion.
So Israelites consented to this religion. So this wasn't just a way of life. Israelites begin to consent to this, that we would denounce the laws given to us through Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Read.
Now here's the bullet points.
Here's the bullet points. Let's go.
And sacrifice unto idols.
Hold up. Number 1, sacrifice unto idols.
And profane the Sabbath.
Profane the Sabbath. Hold up now. So they agreed to do this. This is a satanic agreement.
Mm.
that will bring all the Gentiles together, make sure that they sacrifice to idols. The sacrificing to idols are the holy days that are set up under Babylon. Christmas, Easter, Sunday, Lent, all of that is a sacrifice unto idols. And then we must agree all together to profane the Sabbath day of the Lord. When God said, remember the Sabbath? Come on.
For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah that they should follow the strange laws of the land.
So now they're pressuring our people to follow the strange laws of the land. That means, no, you treat the Sabbath like any other day. Profane it. You're going to find this is a time in which the Gentiles began to heavily push Sunday worship, like it was in ancient Babylon. All quiet on Sunday, but profane the Sabbath of the Lord. Come on.
If I can mention, this was forced upon all nations, but it had a specific profound effect on our nation.
Exactly. They all agreed to it, but it had the greatest impact, the greatest negative impact against us. Because we were given the law and we were told, according to the law, to keep the Sabbath. And this also proves, like I think Gaja pulled out before we discussed this earlier, the madness that they're teaching in the Seventh-day Adventists. It proved that that's a total false doctrine, that the so-called Sunday law is the mark of the beast. When the Sunday law was instituted during Antiochus Epiphanes, what are you talking about?
It was illegal. It was illegal to keep the Sabbath.
It was illegal to keep the Sabbath during Antiochus Epiphanes' time. Come on.
45. And forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days.
So also that they should not only just profane the Sabbath, but also that our people should do what?
Profane the Sabbaths and festival days.
No more festival days for the Hebrew Israelites. You ought to follow our pagan days.
So ask yourself a question. Is your church telling you this? That you shouldn't keep the Sabbath?
Exactly.
So what church are you under?
What church are you under that's saying that you could profane the Sabbath and celebrate Christmas and Easter? And totally denounce and disrespect the holy days as written in the same Bible you claim to uphold. Read.
46. And pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols.
Catholic Church. When the Catholic Church conquered us, when they conquered, look at what they did to our people in Africa. Set up a church filled with idols. The Palikwa Taino Indians and those that they conquered even over here in the Americas turned the Israelites who were scattered throughout the earth into idolaters. In the name of Christ, in the name of Jesus.
And that's the difference. At this time, we knew what it was.
We knew what it was back then.
Right.
And chose it.
Exactly. So now the dangerous thing is that this same concept is being taught under the guise of Christ.
Exactly.
This is what Christ desires.
They're teaching this concept as if Christ commanded it, when really it's a command through what? A Greek tyrant by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes. It had nothing to do with Jesus doing away with the Sabbath. They're really teaching the principles in the Christian church of Antiochus Epiphanes. That wicked root that the Bible speaks of. Come on.
Verse 47, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts.
And they sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beast. So who would teach you it's okay to eat swine and unclean and pray over it and sanctify it? Not Jesus. Antiochus Epiphanes, a pagan demon. Huh? Because when it talks about your daily sacrifice being taken away, the sacrifices are the clean meats that were given to the Israelites to eat. And unclean food was forbidden. That's the whole reason to define a meat as unclean. Don't touch it. It's not for the righteous, the chosen. Because if you eat the animals which eats the sicknesses out of the earth, eventually you become sick. Okay? Come on.
Verse 48, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make
Hold up. Leave their children uncircumcised. Break the law of Abraham and have them walk uncircumcised. Read.
and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation.
Hold up. Make them what?
Make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness.
Hold up. So by them doing what? Profaning the Sabbath, keeping them away from the holy days, having them worship the holy days of the Gentiles, sacrifice the idols, eventually it will have an effect on their minds and their soul. They'll become the example of wickedness on the earth, being portrayed in the earth with rotten souls. By doing this, it would have a profound effect on their demeanors. There would be now the example of disobedience in the earth. Go ahead.
Before you read that, I want to finish this out, and you can bring that in.
Okay. Go
Verse
on.
49. This is the purpose of all this. To the end.
To the end. Now, here was the Antiochus' purpose.
That they might forget the law.
That they might forget God's law.
And change all the ordinances.
And change all the ordinances that was given to us through our God. Now, if we fell by disobeying God's law, and they've instituted these tenets in our religion, having us believing the whole time we're serving God, how will we ever get out of this condition under the Gentiles? We believe we're doing right by celebrating Christmas, Easter. We don't know that this is direct defiant of the God who made us. We have no idea. Now they're teaching in Christianity, believe it or not, these tenets that were against our God, that was forced on our people. They're teaching you you're wrong if you seek to follow God's law. That you should want Sunday worship over the Sabbath. You see the trick? You see how they switched out righteousness with unrighteousness and now have our people defending it, upholding it? Why? Because it tells us in Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. If you knew what you were doing, you would walk away. You would put it down. Go on, Elder Lawyer.
Yes, sir. A few more verses, and then I'll bring you up. It says here, verse 50. I'm going to read verses 50 through 51, and I'm going to jump down to verse 61.
Come on.
To the end that they might forget the laws and change all the ordinances, and whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king.
Now, whoever defied this commandment, this religious order,
he said he should die.
He should die. Eventually kill those who would uphold the righteous laws of God. Now we see why Christ was killed by the Romans, folks. They're lying to you about Christ. Christ didn't do away with the law given to Moses. They killed him because he was a threat to the Gentile statutes and their laws that did what? That would rival God's law. Understand this. This is why they killed Christ. He was a threat to the Roman Empire Because by the time the Romans came on the scene, this decree was totally instituted in the pagan life of what you would call Europeans or Romans up until this present time. But back then, it was totally instituted by the time the Romans came on the scene. That paganism is normal now. We're not to follow the laws of God.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Verse 51, in the selfsame manner, he wrote his whole kingdom and appointed officers over all the people.
Come on.
Commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. So he set up overseers, officers, or ministers to ensure that this went forward. Key verse here says here, verse 61. See if this sounds familiar. It says, or I'll start in verse 60. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised, and they hanged the infants about their necks.
So they started killing the children and women for enforcing the law given to our people by our God.
But check out the manner
As
of
an
killing.
example.
Check out the manner of killing.
Check out the manner of killing.
They hanged them about their necks. Does that sound familiar?
Hanging them about their necks. Same thing they did to us in the New World, in America. Same. Now this happened, what we're reading, folks, happened, 100 and some odd years before Christ was born. They were trying to institute the total defiance of God's law as law on the earth. Because this would be what? This would be a constant way in the future of keeping the children of Israel under their power. So this was a religious belief here. They would have to institute this within the religious institutions. And that's why our people have suffered. The more religious we become, the worse off we become. That's why. Because they teach us to break the laws within these religions. Islam as well as Christianity. As well as Eastern religions. I don't care how good, how relaxing the music is. I can put on some music and you know, and put on some rain and have some rain play behind it. Let me tell you, folks, anytime you see an idol, you should see a demon. That's a gate, a vortex. Okay? I wanted to put that out there. They began to make the tenets that we see naturally, that we defend naturally in Christianity, a law in which if Israelites didn't follow the heathen ways and denounce the Sabbath, that they should be killed. What's wrong with having a law in which you're civil with everyone else, you're following God's commandments, you're following the Passover, Christ's Passover, in remembrance of him. You're following the Passover also in remembrance of our God saving us out of the land of Egypt. You're not supposed to kill, steal, commit adultery, and do no wickedness. You're supposed to love your neighbor as thyself. What's wrong with a law like that? And why would the church teach that that's done away with? Why would they try to say, well, we keep all the laws except the Sabbath? Why would they state that? We keep the 10 Commandments. They'd be like, no, you're lying. They well, except the Sabbath. Why, Pastor? Why all the laws except the Sabbath? Because Antiochus and Epiphanes, the Gentiles, told you not to keep it. Or they'll lie. Oh no, well, I teach, I serve God every day. You are a liar. You're lying to yourself.
So did the Israelites. The Israelites worship God every day.
We worship God every day.
But that didn't, make the Sabbath.
Exactly. They didn't change what the Sabbath is.
Exactly.
This is what I was going to add before when you're saying it comes in right with it. Romans 7:14. For we know that the law is spiritual. So check it out. Once we start to break the laws, right, something happens within the spirit. And that's the aim.
Yes.
The aim is to distort the spirit.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
Because you have to realize Satan gave Antiochus and the Greeks and Romans the formula.
Mm.
If you want to destroy the soul of an Israelite, these tenets must be in place.
Mm.
Then we can control them through disobedience. We have to make sure that when we set up a religious institution, idols are attached to it. We have to make sure they forget and profane the Sabbath because that connects them with their God. We have to also have them follow our holy days and denounce their holy days because not just what it'll do on the surface, it's what it'll do to their inward souls. It turns them dark.
Yes.
Because of their disobedience, the residual effects of the disobedience is they will become the children of disobedience on earth. They will no longer value family, children, women. They'll become dishonorable because why? If you're that way towards your God, what's to stop you from being even more a wreck of disobedience amongst your people? So this was a formula that affects our people a certain type of way. It doesn't affect the Gentiles like that because they weren't given the law. But it turns our souls dark. It turns us. Because anytime you can make an excuse not to do what God say, what is to stop you from doing anything?
Right.
Like what type of
What restraints do you have now?
the whole thing is when it comes to a relationship and my responsibility to my fellow man.
If I don't regard my God,
If I can just disobey God and break his oath,
who cares?
what type of agreement can I keep with you?
Exactly.
That's what it is.
How can I trust you?
That's the truth. That is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
and just dropping a little historic tidbit. It was just before Antiochus and Epiphany, under the Ptolemaic dynasty, that they had translated made the Septuagint,
Right.
studying the people,
Right.
saying that, oh well, the Greeks need to know the laws, the Greeks, Hellenists needed to know the Bible. But anyway,
Exactly.
they never cared about that. It was a way to find out how can we get these people going against their God. We need the history.
See, but this is how I deal with these Gentiles now. When they say, well, listen, the law is done away with. My answer to them is, you're not in no position to tell me what our law is. The law wasn't given to you.
So how you know it's done away with?
So who gives you the authority to tell us something that your people had nothing to do with?
Right.
Should I listen to you? According to the history I'm reading, following your religion actually rottens my soul. Okay? Following what you're doing is actually deteriorating me. So I have nothing to, listen, you can say the law is done away with because it wasn't given to you, but it affects our people. Have you seen the ghetto? Do you think these are people you should be telling the law is done away with? You think these are the people you should be telling that to? Okay, so the Bible, it tell you here, now it gives us, it identifies in history, biblical history, this guy exists. The actual, I would call, architect of the doctrine that would keep our people in perpetual servitude under Gentiles. That's the architect right there, Antiochus. We have to make sure we set up sacrifices of idols, make sure these particular people profane the Sabbath, and they must follow our sacrifice holy days to Moloch, opposed to their holy days. And if people decide to come together and not do so, eventually we have to plan on getting rid of them altogether, because once these people begin to follow this,
So
we as a people or rulers have no more power over these people. No servants, no slaves, no kingdom.